born and raised in Buena Vista. Never knew the number of the street all my life. Nobody used numbers. You only had a P.O. box. And when I went off to college, they said, "What is the number of your house on your street?" I could not answer it.
I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, April the 22nd, 1931. And I grew up in Columbia really until through my second year in high school when my parents moved to Greenville. I went to school on a naval scholarship and I was serving on active duty in the Navy. And in the meantime, my father had come to Lexington and asked me if I wouldn't, when I could, resign my commission and come here and work with him, and that's what brought me to Lexington. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I got in the military because it was a way to get my college education paid for. I was the first person and the only person in my immediate family that got a college degree. And so it was a way to go to college and have most of it paid for. But my experience was really good. I think it was in the Navy that I, for the first time, really realized that I had some potential and that I could do things. It gave me a sense of self-confidence that I never had before. So it was good. Good Lord, that was so long ago. And of course in Lexington, everybody knew everybody, more or less. I thought she was good looking. I still do think she's the prettiest woman in the state of Virginia. But I was impressed by her abilities and her, what I thought at the time was self-confidence. It really wasn't. It was overcoming, I think, a sense of timidity. She was a lot of fun.
We lived next door to each other for a short period of time when I was building a house, and the children knew each other from school. And so it was a camp out for me until we could move into a house that is not this house today, but one up on Sunset Drive. And our paths crossed a lot because our children were doing some of the same things. And secondly, if you did anything civic-wise, you usually had 10 or 12 people on a board and we would share. Well, I thought he looked great. He didn't have any hair, but that didn't make any difference. And he never let that bother him, and I think that was a good thing. And one day we were riding on an airplane going on a trip, and there was a little thing, I think it was Good Housekeeping, that said, if you're taking this drug, desist immediately, because it will cause hair loss. Well, he was taking the drug. Mm-hmm. So that was the end of the drug. Busy because I had nieces. We did not invite any outside people besides family. And I had nieces who were all having their Christmas program that day in kindergarten and I did not want to betray the fact that I wasn't going to participate. And one of them had asked me to bake some cookies to bring to the program. And so on that morning, I was trying to get the cookies done, go to the two programs, and just have a few people in after we got married.
No.
I think we did well.
Martha Lou did all the work, and she did an incredible job, I thought. And
we had them at different places.
Mm-hmm.
We had, but 5 girls. It was our production and our resources that put those on, and then the 6th one, the father said that he would prefer that I do the wedding than the friend he had at the time, which was a second marriage for him, and Kathy her mother had died when she was 8.
And that was the best one of all, because Martha Lou got to do exactly what she wanted to do, and it didn't cost me a penny. You look at me?
Yes.
Work hard at it. I think that's the biggest thing. Marriage is difficult, I think, and I think you really have to be committed to it and work as hard as you can to make it work. I think some of the things that help is to find things that you enjoy together. Try to have fun, try to take a break. Look for as much positive as you can find, and try to overlook the negative, because there's going to be some of that. You know, two people living together, there's always something that the other person does that irritates you. You just have to learn to live with it.
The times were a lot easier. There was,
So easier to raise children.
Raise children. There were no
Wow.
drugs, particularly. There was no games to play. Nobody had cell phones. You weren't supporting those, and the extraneous stuff was just not there for young people.
It was a little more
Easy.
a little more innocent time than now. I would dread raising children in this environment, I think. I'd hope we'd rise to the occasion, but
Because I would be crazy if I didn't have some purpose to get up and go do something. And I just feel like that it's just the thing you need to do as long as you physically can. And at times when we were raising your parents, I had 3 different jobs because we were trying to support the situation. And one of them was out of community college, out of town. One of them was at Southern Seminary, and then later on, then we had the store. And you all as children, your parents as children would say, "Oh, we just love this. And we can have clothes that are free out of the store," except for Ellison, who said, "Gosh dang, these things don't look like what I see in Iowa," because it was, very Brooks Brothers and in no jeans or whatever. So
both of us
or driven.
have worked hard all of our lives, so some of it's habit. Some of it is the fact that neither one of us wants to just sit around and waste away or grow old just sitting there doing nothing. And with Martha Lou, to some extent, she's got it in her mind that if you're not busy doing something, you must be doing something wrong. I mean, because she doesn't ask me how I feel. She'll say, "What have you accomplished today?" So some of it is just the way we were raised.
Both of us had parents that, had jobs when 12 and 13 years of age, and Buddy did because Papa always made him mow the grass, clean up, and he got 10 cents an hour. My father, otherwise, said you have a summer job no matter what, and we lived on a hill, and I would walk to work, usually at a doctor's office in town, to relieve the people who would be taking vacation. And I would, or I was going to school, and my father would come up the hill that was a very steep hill and wave.
He would drive by and
wave, and I'd get up there and get home, and I'd say, it's lunchtime or whatever it was. I said, "Why didn't you stop and pick me up?" He said, "Well, number one, you needed to walk. And number two, I didn't want to stop on a steep hill." Well, he wasn't about to pick me up in any way. But the other thing is that when I went to college, I was 15 years old because there was no first grade and no 8th grade. And therefore, I guess those good jobs that I had helped me accept what my peer group had, which was being 18. Oh, he loved that. He loved that. We kept him a lot because he was the first grandchild. And So they would, at that time, you could put a child on a plane and fly him to wherever, but you can't do that, now. And we got so that we would send him halfway back so he would never have to change planes. So he would love to go in my jewelry drawer in my thing and count the pennies, and he'd hear me rattling around and he'd want to know what it was. So we enjoyed him because he was the first.
Set an example for your employees by working real hard and treat everybody as good as you can possibly treat them. I think you don't realize how that pays off, but it really does.
I think that we heard more about the children wanting to do more than we accepted as a family. Our rules seemed to be much more strict than their peer group, and we did get some, I would say, flack from our friends who said, "Why don't you let up on those children?" And when you all came home, when your parents came home, we had a curfew from college, and they said, "Well, we don't have one there." And we said, "Your feet are under this table." And therefore, at 11 o'clock, there's nothing healthy to do in Lexington. But if you want to stay up, come bring your friends home. That would be much more accepting for us not to have to stay up all night wondering where you were and then having to go to work the next day.
But your question was, what's the worst thing any of that?
I couldn't list them.
There were plenty of them. And Chippy was the only boy, and I think he got in more scrapes than all the girls put together over his youth. Or maybe we heard more about his. But in looking back, there were some times when I would gladly have killed them all. But in looking back, they were really pretty good kids. They got into, they did stuff just like you've done.
I've never thought about it. I just think that there was, start collecting some of my thing, and because I was also teaching in the art world and then teaching interior design and costume design and different things like that I liked pretty things. And we have too many of them now, but hopefully someday we'll have you all make a choice.
I'm going to be glad for you to haul some of it off this weekend. But the Roosters is because I'm South Carolina Gamecock, and I'm behind the Roosters.
You would say grits, wouldn't you?
I don't think about it, but anything fried for Mark Lou. What's the most delicious thing in Southern cooking? There's a lot of it, but I like real old Southern cooking that I was raised on. You're right, grits, collard greens, rice, things like that, if they're done right.
Tell them you never saw a potato.
The only time I ever had a potato growing up was in potato salad in the summer. I've never had a French fry, a baked potato, or mashed potatoes in our house. It's not what we ate rice or grits.
Starting out with some object that they like very well and trying to plan their whole room around it, and realizing that maybe they needed to start out with the rug as the basis, and then do the paint, and then do the furniture, and also to buy less and spend more money on something that will last the rest of your life. But I also think TJ Maxx is just wonderful.
In this house?
In the invoice.
Yeah. As I tell all of my friends, that building the house, or certainly about decorating the house, the only voice I ever had was the invoice. Well, there would be some other places probably. Everybody thinks I would say South Carolina, and that's probably the more practical. But if there was just, I could just name anywhere, I'd probably move to East Africa.
Probably South Carolina, and the good times that we've had there, but and the fact that we knew we had to enjoy it because we worked long and hard to be able to have beach property, and it was enlightening, and it was a combination of our upbringing in a different world. And I always said everything in South Carolina was manana. If somebody said they were going to come work on something, you had to add 3 days to it, versus the state of Virginia. For me, the realization that I was so poorly educated on that part of the world, and there was always something in any of the trips that we took that we had not done before, and there were things that we really wanted to go back to see what it was still like. But it was a very growing up experience to see how those people have to live.
For me, I've always said that if there truly was an Eden, it had to have been in East Africa. I think it's just absolutely gorgeous countryside. There's no pollution there. It's clear, it's crystal clear. Climate's good, things grow, and I really like the people.
One of many, but I think we have enjoyed the Netherlands and the tulips and all of that part of the country as much as anything. And you didn't have the hustle bustle of the cities, which we always went to and happy to explore, but it was just a very calming experience to see all that beauty that could be amassed in the gardens.
Yeah, Kirkenhof. But there's also incredible museums in the Netherlands, all around Amsterdam. They're almost all within walking distance of each other. We've been there a lot of times, and I certainly love it. I'm not so sure that that's my favorite, though. I think my favorite is probably the last one I was on, whatever it was, I think the 2 programs that we instituted, I had great city councils, and we really worked together, and we had laid out a plan of what we wanted to do, and we did it all while I was in office. So I'm proud of every bit of it, but I think the thing that I'm the most proud of, and it gets the least amount of attention, we had 2 programs. One was Threshold, and we literally were building houses for low-income people. And we went in and got a lot of properties that had fallen in. We finally found all the heirs, and we would manage to buy it, tear it down, put a nice house in there. I think it really improved that neighborhood incredibly. It improved a lot of lives. And along the way, we had an ancillary program called Safe and Sound. And we would go in that same area of the city, and if people needed new porch rails or gutters or, repairs to the house, we would do it for them. And I'm really proud of what we did. Well, that was an exciting night. One of the reasons that we did that in the city was the former police chief of Greenville, South Carolina, was nationally, internationally known. I heard him speak a number of times in what did I say?
Greenville.
No, I'm sorry, in Charleston. And one of the points that he made was that after a certain hour, children of a certain age shouldn't be on the street. If they were out there, then their parents should know about it. And it impressed me, and we talked about it, and we thought, you know, if parents are not minding over their children and they're wandering around at weird hours of the night, they are bound to be up to the wrong thing. And so we did that. It scooped up 2 grandchildren.
On their way to McDonald's.
So they say. We would go there every summer. Martha Lou's mother and father would get a room upstairs that had a little kitchenette in it. And then we would get, I can't remember how many rooms, but it ended up, all the girls would end up in one room. And unfortunately, we very seldom, if ever, checked on till one day one of the maids came and knocked on our door and said, I ain't cleaning up that room with it like it is. And I went over there, and it was standing in water and towels, and they'd all showered, and Lord knows what. It was the worst thing I'd ever seen. We finally got it cleaned up enough for the maid to get in there and clean it up. I think maybe that that put a stop to some of the shenanigans. Oh, how much?
The biggest tag.
Gosh, yeah. I don't know, but they're shocking, some of them. But I've always figured when I die, whatever I have, my family's going to get. And I'd rather spend it while I'm living with them and enjoy it myself a little bit.
We would always go at the beach to seafood restaurants, but then we would have some of the children. At that time, they were too young to like seafood, so they would always look on the meat side of the menu, which was not very big, and order the biggest steak.
That was your daddy who would do that. They'd be sitting at a separate table. We'd get that bill. Like, good grief. And I'd look down there, and he'd gone down with the biggest, most expensive item on that, T-bone steak or something. That started the first time we were sitting, was it Richard?
No, the bicycle parade is what the city.
I know that, but I took one of the grandchildren in the parade just to have something to do. And Martha Lou had a antique wicker stroller, and we tied that grandchild in the stroller, and I marched in the parade with him. Somehow or other, the newspaper took a picture, and it was in the newspaper. And all the kids got the newspaper. So, man, the phone was ringing off the hook. Next year, I want my child in the parade in that wicker basket. And that kind of got it started, that everybody wanted to be in the parade on 4th of July. And so they bring all the grandkids, and we'd decorate everything we could find, put them all in the parade.
She carries a little bit of a grudge, I hate to say, probably about that, but we really weren't counting heads. It just got to the point that everybody wasn't able to come on our 4th of July fun, and, you know, it just got thinking.
Well, you couldn't have but one in the parade, which was once a year. So if you did it, it'd take 13 years. It'd be too big to get in the wicker stroller anyway.
You were the best one there.
I can still see you fighting that darn camel. What was that camel's name? Omar. I was saying, don't you let him get that. Man, you held on to that bucket of feed. The Omar was trying to pull it away from you.
Didn't he end up biting somebody?
Uh-huh.
They sued, right?
Yeah,
But should damage somebody's arm.
And they ruined the car every time because you had all the debris.
That was a great day, though. I thoroughly enjoyed
I
it.
remember
Yeah.
like it was yesterday.
Oh, yeah, that was one Christmas, and everybody was here, and I was going to try to be a good Samaritan and get all the kids out of the house. They loaded everybody up in the car, and we went to a movie theater, which was in a mall in Stanton, and the ticket kiosk or counter was out in the hall in the mall, and I was trying to keep everybody herded up, but I still had to buy the tickets, and they were asking how many this age and how many that age, and I finally got all the tickets. And we started to go in, and I'm counting heads, and I'm shy one child. The most frightened I think I've ever been in my life. And I lined everybody up, and I dared you to move while it was Corinne, while I tried to figure out where she was. Had somebody spirited her away, or I just didn't know what in the world to think. And after a few minutes, I heard the tinkle, tinkle, and jingle, jingle of an arcade. And I went in there, and sure enough, in the middle of all, she was standing there in awe and wonder, looking at all the machines going. So I hauled everybody in. I found a row of seats that ended up against the wall, and I put everybody in there. I sat on the aisle so nobody could get out.
How many sweaters? I have no idea.
She can't count that high.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't clean out my closets very much. And I wore a sweater the other day I know I'd had for 20 years. And I sort of take a little pride in that, about being able to pull out. And Buddy has been cleaning out his closets lately, and he'll bring me something and say, I think I got this 25 years ago.
At least.
So we are pack rats about thinking, well, maybe someday they'll come back. Well, Lily has come back about 3 times in our generation. So what we think, we'll keep it. We'll have the first one of this new style or concern. Because we didn't have a TV big enough to see.
Oh, that's a story. Martha Lou had every closet in this house full, in every room, and I've just thought, and she was constantly pulling this season in and out and hauling back and forth. I thought, I'm going to build her a dressing room. She can get all of her clothes in and get them out of all the other closets in the house. Thought I was doing a good deed. We were getting ready to go to Germany, I think. And I had figured out I could afford to build that dressing room over there, or I thought I could. And I came home a day or two before we were getting ready to go, and she and the architect were standing there, looked like the cat that swallowed the canary. And they demanded that I couldn't possibly put a wing on one end of the house without matching it on the other wing. And that's how it all took place. It just got out of control, and I ended up spending 4 times what I thought I was going to spend, but we've enjoyed it. It wasn't in my house, it was in my friend's house. I was spending the night with a friend, Mike Hall, and he and I were, like playing like we were chemists, and we were mixing all this stuff together, and so we got mercurochrome and Lord knows what all, and mixing it up innocently enough. And then we heard his parents drive up, and we thought, well, we're gonna get in trouble with this. We better get rid of it. So we poured it out the window, never thinking that it was gonna run down the front of their white house. So we did get in trouble.
I would say that we were very fortunate and lucky and thrilled to have this combination of 6 children, and they really never ever gave us a very serious problem, and they would they would keep upstairs except for one bedroom downstairs. And I never went up there without giving 24-hour notice to thing, but they got along very well, and they, a few of them were out of step sometimes, but in looking back on it, I don't know how how we could have been more fortunate to have had your parents, and they seemed to enjoy each other. There wasn't much tattling, and we'd hear a few doors slam every once in a while, and I don't know whether it was Beth King or no, maybe if Lisa practically seared a finger off of Beth King, or
vice versa.
Was it vice versa? Beth seared it off of Lisa.
She slammed the door on her finger.
So, I mean, to us at that time, they were major things. But looking back on it, they weren't compared to the things that are happening today. But your grandfather would get so exasperated with the children about taking care of whatever little used car they might have. And so one day, tell them the story about having the program after supper.
I think that was when Beth King had gone 35,000 miles without changing the oil in her car. So I thought I would teach them some concept of why you needed to take care of a car. And I brought home a great big easel with, one of those things where you have the pages. And so I had this long meeting with all the kids in one of the rooms in the house, and trying to tell them how a reciprocating engine functioned and why it had to have oil, and I'm drawing pictures and doing all of this, and so that they would realize that they had to maintain their vehicles. And I learned later, they all sat there solemn, listened for an hour or so, and I learned later that they went upstairs and fell on the floor laughing, in reams of laughter at how silly and stupid I was.
And then we had the thing where we accused most of the girls upstairs in one room, and it was the biggest room upstairs, and when you came, we added on to that house, and when you opened up the cupboard, there was all this red stuff.
Well, what we'd done was, where there was a window out of the kitchen, we built a little bar like this bar on the other side, but there was a window there that you could see through to the kitchen, and we had glasses stacked up in there. And we came home a couple of times, and I looked in the glasses, and there was this red residue left in it, and I thought, what one of our kids has been drinking out of these glasses, and why are they dumb enough to leave the wine in there? They should know that I'm going to find it. I'm just raising holy Cain, and got them all down. I said, I want to know who did it. And they all looked at me, this blank look. I said, I'm telling you, nobody's going out of this house until you tell me who did it. Well, they all swore and be damned that it wasn't me, kind of thing. Well, anyway, I probably did keep them in for a while. We had another big rain, and I walked in there, and of course we'd been home the whole time this time, and there it was again. And I realized, well, I don't think they've been in here using these glasses. Turned out that we put these window air conditioning in their bedrooms upstairs, and the little panels on the side had gone bad in one of them, and I'd put poster board up there to seal the window, and it was red. And it had obviously gotten wet and dripped out through the house, and dripped in where that old window had been. They were all just as innocent as they could be. But I gave them a hard time.
And the kitchen was always the busiest place. And you got through one meal, and it was already another meal. And they were just back and forth in there, and it was tiny. It was not a big
No, it was really a small
kitchen. And finally, Buddy put chains on the doors not the
The little
door,
thing that you could just
clip shut.
do it over and click it over. Like, it means that the kitchen is closed.
Don't go in there. And then they soon found out they could just crawl through where the counter was. And
And I caught them in the process several times.
with a chicken leg on the way upstairs. And
No, they would go up the steps like this on their hands, the elbows and knees, carrying fried chicken.
Boy, you all had your hands full.
but we loved it. I think you can always do that very well. But
Disperse wisdom. I think it's, what I'm going to say should be important. It's hard to really say exactly the right thing, but I would advise everybody to try and live life to the fullest, work real hard, play real hard, be real good to everybody, and try and do good. So just be able to look over your shoulder and say, I left the world a little better than it was before me.
and your expression about golden years.
Oh, and my advice is don't wait till the golden years to enjoy yourself, because when you get there, you'll find the gold is turned to brass.